We request Mr. Karthikeyan, member CLF, to introduce the speaker.
It's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, who is born at Bangalore. He completed his degree in history, economics, and political science. He completed his master's degree in marketing and advertisement management. He started his career as a copywriter and then full-time theatre professional. He is an Indian director, actor, and writer. He wrote his first play, Where There Is a Will, There Is a Way. He wrote such plays as Final Solutions, Dance Like a Man, Bravely Fought the Queen, On a Muggy Night in Mumbai, Tara, and 30 Days in September. He directed Mango Shuffle, Morning Raga, Dance Like a Man, Egg Alak Mosam. His plays have been directed by eminent directors like Arvind Gaur, Alik Badamsi, and Lilat Dubey. He is the Sahitya Academy awardee for his play Final Solutions. Dance Like a Man has won the award for the Best Picture in English, awarded by the National Panorama in 1998. Sahitya Kala Parishad selected Final Solutions, Tara, and 30 Days in September as Best Productions of the Year, directed by Arvind Gaur. Ladies and gentlemen, please join with me to welcome our guest speaker, Mahesh Dattani.
What I plan to do, I too have a book to sell. This is a book that's going to be released on the 16th. It's called Me and My Plays. It has an essay called Me and My Plays, and also two of my scripts that haven't been published so far. Where Did I Leave My Padda and The Big Fat City. So I'm just going to read out a few excerpts from the essay, Me and My Plays, because it is really somewhat of a memoir as to how I started writing, how I started getting involved in the theatre, and how that led me to my playwriting, which was quite by accident. So I'm just going to read out a few excerpts for about 10 minutes. And then after that, if there are any questions, I could take questions, or we shall part after that. Bangalore in the 1960s was considered a pensioner's paradise. How many of you have been to Bangalore? Oh, quite a few. When? Was it recently, earlier? How many of you? Earlier, right. So you've probably seen the city deteriorate the way I have, because I grew up in Bangalore. And it was indeed a paradise of sorts, with its salubrious weather, quiet roads, and friendly people. There were pockets in the city that housed communities that had migrated from the north of the Vindhyas. We never did fit into the upwardly mobile, wealth-showing community of Gujaratis, and we rarely socialized as families. So it was always an exciting day when we received the community newsletter that occasionally updated us on festivals, events, or death, and ever so occasionally announced the staging of a Gujarati play at the town hall. My father used to talk very fondly of his days in Bombay, as it was called then, before it was changed to Mumbai in the 90s, when he would visit the theatres at Bhangwadi to see Gujarati musical drama near the city's notorious Opium Bazaar. How many of you know the word bhang? Does that mean anything in Tamil? It does. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Bhang is our version of hashish. It's opium, basically. And there was this area in Bombay called Bhangwadi. For obvious reasons, that's where you went if you wanted to buy some opium. And it's very interesting that the most popular theatre for Gujarati plays was in Bhangwadi as well. And that's probably also the way theatre was looked on as a kind of den of inequity. My father would talk about legends like Moti Bai, Miss Shama Bai, and comedian Chhagan Romeo, all of whom were stars with a faithful following. Performances would go on for hours, longer than scheduled, because of the cries of "once more," which led to popular song routines being replayed, sometimes almost a dozen times. But all this was just a fairy tale to me, as real as the stories in Chanda Mama that my sister Padma would read out from when I was a child. I must have been about 9 years old when I got to see the real thing. It was at the town hall in Bangalore. It seemed so grand in those days with its Roman columns, majestic arches and corridors. I remember the Gujarati community well turned out in their safari suits and American Georgette saris. My mother was probably the most excited of all of us meeting old friends from her hometown. The banter was invariably about weddings, wedding plans, and prospective brides and grooms. The men talked only about business, and the Africa returned traders always lauded it over the locals. The shrill bell announcing the start of the play could just about be heard over the loud voices in the foyer, and it did little to cut short the chatter. When even the third bell could not succeed in getting people to move from the foyer into the hall, the local sponsors resorted to desperate pleas, imploring people to go inside so that they could start the play. Inside, the decibel levels did not diminish. In fact, they grew even stronger as people called out to friends across the hall. Class divides were clearly drawn, with the local sponsors getting front row seats, while the rest of us got whatever came to us, scurrying for seats near the fans. The announcements commenced with requests to keep silent and take crying infants out of the auditorium, and then the play began. After the initial awe of seeing real people on stage, unlike in the movies, I was struck by the loud voices of the actors and their loud costumes. It was a play about well-off Gujaratis. Yes, the women wore Georgette, and there was a character who had returned from Africa. The woman was meeting her lover secretly at home, but the husband returned a little early. There was laughter in the house, which died down soon after the husband brought out a gun. There were sharp intakes of breath as a gun was passed around. The very air crackled with tension. It was clear to all of us, including me with my virgin sense of dramaturgy, that the gun would go off at some point. At one light moment in the play, the gun came to the actress who, turning around to the audience, shot at a man in the front row. Bang! The man fell off his seat after a loud cry and was rushed out of the hall. It was only once the house lights came on as the curtains fell that I became aware once again that I was in a hall with about 1,000 people. There was a palpable silence in the hall before the murmurs picked up again. Only this time they were talking about the play, especially the twist before the interval. They were keen to know what would happen next. I was fascinated not only by the plot, but also the effect the play had on its audience. If something like this could shut the mouths of 1,000 Gujaratis, I had to be a part of this magic. This was indeed the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Despite my newfound love for theatre, I had no opportunity to even express my desire to act in a play. It seemed such an impossible dream. But I recall becoming more attentive to my father's stories of Bhangwadi in the past at the theatres he used to frequent during his business trips to Bombay. In school, I was too shy to try out for the annual school production, usually a Christmas pageant. One year, our class teacher encouraged me to try out for a part. I was cast as one of the angels who visit the manger when Jesus is born. I had no lines, but I had to flap my arms around and throw stardust on the crib. When I got on stage, the entire school was watching, including the teachers I was scared of. My knees were shaking and I could barely move my arms. This just didn't seem right. I thanked God. Jesus at that time, because we were told if we didn't believe in him, we would all go to hell, that I hadn't got a speaking part. I don't think I've ever been as frightened as I was then. The rest of school was very uneventful. I was average at most subjects, although quick at grasping things. This was one of the better, what was called the better schools, but read that as English medium schools. My parents, being in a state that was foreign to them in so many ways, were keen that my sisters and I study in schools that would teach us to speak good English. And English was one of the subjects that I quickly warmed up to. It was as though the universe was conspiring to wash my brains of my Gujarati heritage and displace me linguistically. I was fascinated by the English poets, by Dickens and the Lamb's version of Shakespeare, because my teachers were so passionate about them. The literature of the state that had adopted me was alien to me. I hadn't even heard of writers like Shivram Karanth, Lankesh, Girish Karnad, and I suspect neither had my teachers. As for the literatures and language of Gujarat, they were something that my parents indulged in, and so were not to be taken seriously. They belonged to the past, my parents, and for me, my school and the English language were the present. I didn't realize it at the time, but this attitude would spell my doom in the decades to come. By the 70s, I was in college. This may have been a swinging time for the swish set in Bombay or Delhi, but in sleepy Bangalore, it was still a sensational matter if daring girls hitched rides to college or a really bold one clung to the waist of a leather-clad boyfriend riding a bullet as they zipped down Brigade Road. There was the occasional jam session, that's what we call them, at a friend's home with some weed being passed around. Never mind what weed means. One heard of worse things, but they may have only been the workings of over-enthusiastic imaginations and wishful thinking. At college, too, the drama club was appropriated by the lot who were more with it. I did try to get my way in, but I guess I was too square for them. The big event was the Spring Festival. You guys are lucky because you have so many festivals now and so many avenues. Things like the Literature Festival and the My Theatre Festival that every college is now so enthusiastic. Even Etiraj College has a very nice drama department and their plays are excellent. I've seen some of them. Yeah, but it wasn't so in my time. Where was I? Yes. And then came my second significant taste of drama. It happened quite unexpectedly. A friend of a friend was acting in an English play. Tickets were being sold on campus, and I decided to check it out. It was a play called Table Manners, written by an English playwright. It was Alan Ayckbourn, performed by the Bangalore Little Theatre. This was the first English play that I saw on a public stage. The play was a mild-mannered comedy about people I couldn't really place in my head, unlike the Gujarati whodunit I had seen as a child. Yet this play was in a language I could understand better, the language I wanted to understand better, the language I spoke in with my friends and my sisters. There was a different kind of excitement mounting in me. I can only describe it as a close encounter of the third kind. I actually knew one of the actors. This alien but fascinating world was now within my reach. A friend of a friend is only one introduction away. We got ourselves invited to the play's green room party. I'm just going to skip to a little later in the 70s. It's actually my memoirs that take me through the late 60s, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and to the present day. But, we don't need to go through all of it. Plus, if you really want to read it, you'll have to buy the book. Around the late 1970s, a schoolmate named Bimal contacted me. Although Bimal and I were not friends in school, we met because he wanted to share with me his secret passion, theatre. To think we were in the same school, nursing the same interest for theatre. He was very keen to be an actor. He wanted to start a theatre group and wanted me to direct the first play. I had previously done a workshop with BLT for directors where I had presented a rather well-received short play by George Bernard Shaw called Passion, Poison and Petrifaction. Bimal's proposal interested me and I said yes to him. I don't think I knew what I was getting into then, but I'm eternally grateful to Bimal for having the courage to step out of his shell and actually do something. He was an inspiration to me. Left to myself, I think I may have been content just dreaming about doing things. He gave me the courage to move on and do far more daring things like writing a play. Very much like what Carol was talking about. It's the people whom you associate with. And I am indeed grateful that I had Bimal as a friend who was far more motivated than me. And so I got motivated on account of being his friend. By the mid-1980s, I joined my father in his agency to sell machinery for packaging and printing. At the same time, I started my drama group called Playpen. The early productions were all Western plays ranging from a Greek tragedy, done very badly, to Neil Simon. I used to assist my father by visiting our supplier's head office in Bombay. I always timed my visit that I could catch a play at Prithvi Theatre. Like Prithvi Theatre in Bombay is the hub of theatre activity, a bit like, I guess, your music academy over here or the museum theatre. On one such trip, I happened to see a Hindi play. The audience was completely engrossed in the play, applauding at certain points when hard-hitting lines were delivered with great emphasis. Now, this was a moment of realization for me. It struck me that the culture of the audience and the culture of the characters in the play were the same. They could relate completely with what was happening on stage. The applause and laughter were of recognition. So that set me off thinking that why is my theatre so alien to what I was seeing in Hindi or in Gujarati? And to me, that's when I decided that I need to start writing original plays. And I thought, why not try my hand at writing? And that's how my journey as a playwright began. Now, today, of course, I'm more known as a playwright. I've been invited here because I'm a playwright. But I do see myself as a dramatist because it's my interest in theatre that got me writing, not the other way around. And so I write for the theatre, which is a very specialized craft. That's why we're called playwrights, W-R-I-G-H-T-S. It is more the craft of constructing a play, which is our occupation. Rather than actually writing it for the page. It's written for the stage, right? So thank you very much again for this opportunity, and it is indeed an honor. Thank you.